Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. And this is Robert Phoenix, and you're here with me for another edition of the Friday FARcast as he adjusts his mic. I'm trying to get the audio in a place where people, excuse me, can actually experience it and enjoy it. I'm hoping for that perfect pitch. Gotten some good feedback from people. YouTube, new people lately. Hey, you got good content, fix the audio. I'm hearing some feedback every now and then. So I'm getting feedback on the feedback. It's a beautiful day here. We had a massive storm. You know, Texas is a state that openly states that it geoengineers. They have a geoengineering program here inside the state of Texas. Of course they would, Texas A&M. Agriculture and military. That's what the A&M stands for, agriculture and military. Isn't that interesting? Or maybe it's mechanical. I don't want to be, let me see. I got to make sure. I thought it was military. Let me just hold on. I cannot stand being wrong now. Let's just get into it here. Because being wrong is not a good look. All right, let's see. Just want to make sure. Get into the Wikipedia. Wikipedia is great for just superficial knowledge. You know what I'm saying? Here we go. Wikipedia. Agriculture and mechanical. There we go. I just wanted to make sure. But yeah, so Texas A&M designation as a land, sea, and space grant institution, the only university in Texas to hold all three designations, reflects a range of research with ongoing projects funded by organizations such as NASA, the NIH, the National Science Foundation, and the Office of Naval Research. Okay, so Texas A&M is a big research center. And I would not have any, again, I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants on this, but Texas does have its own state-sponsored geoengineering program, and I'm betting that Texas A&M is right there at the center of it. Now, there is a military aspect with Texas A&M. It's not just agricultural and mechanical, which is what the A&M stands for. As a senior military college, Texas A&M is one of the 6 American public universities with a full-time volunteer corps of cadets who study alongside civilian undergraduate students. So there is a military aspect to A&M. You see, that was the M I was picking up on. Now that we've cleared that up, how is everybody? We had a major storm yesterday. It was, how would I describe this thing? It was almost like the sky had an enema. I mean, it was really, it was so intense, man. It was kind of like, and then bang! We had thunder, we had lightning, and we had globules of rain that were probably the size of marbles. You know those big, fat globules of water that just splat and hit you like little water balloons? That's what it was like. And it came down hard. And these things happen for about like 25 minutes. But it's the most intense 25 minutes of meteorological angst you'll ever see. And then after that, okay, a lot of the times there's this clearing of the weather. It takes place almost immediately. It's like, whoo, hey, good. Feels much better. Kind of like the looters after the blackout in New York in 1977. Some of them felt quite peaceful after that. Like looting is catharsis. Maybe they could have like a theme park, called Loot Town. And you pay, no, you wouldn't have to pay. Maybe they could be like state sponsored, right? State sponsored. And you ship people in from urban areas, Blight, wherever it's happening, doesn't matter. It could be, I don't know, West Virginia, perhaps, south side of Chicago, and you give them a day at Loot Town, and everything's set up for them to have this kind of looting experience. Better yet, let's take it one step further. Oh, have I solved this? Virtual reality. Virtual reality. You stick people in a virtual reality situation where they get to loot. How about that? Oh man, we've solved this thing. So it's like, hey, would you like to experience this virtual reality program? Sure. What do I get to do? Well, you get to, do a lot of really fun things like hit people over the head with a baseball bat and steal all kinds of electronics, some money. Run through a blight-ravaged city where there's fires and smoke. You get to be chased by police, and at the end, you don't get caught. How does that sound? Sign me up, bro! And they get to experience this virtual looting, and at the end, they have this catharsis. And they go back into their lives kind of satisfied. Like, oh, okay. I got that out of my system. Until, of course, the urge rises again. Like, oh, would you like another turn at Loot Town? Come on over. We can set you up with your own pair of glasses at home. I think that might be the case. Anyway, so the storm, and normally these storms are very cathartic. It's really clear as the year. But yesterday, this heavy-duty kind of haze, this damp, misty, boggy haze came down upon the landscape. And I've never been to Vietnam, but it sure felt like Vietnam. And that lasted for a while. And we had to wait to get into the night before that cleared up. And then finally, today. Not a modified cloud in the sky. Feels good. So what's happening out there with everybody in the non-virtual land? Although I suppose we are sharing a virtual experience right now. The weekend is upon us. Mars is moving closer to Donald Trump's sun. So let's talk about the Comey thing a little bit. I think it's very interesting. There's a lot more that's coming out about it. Apparently, Comey thought Trump was nuts. He thought Trump was just bonkers. He said he was crazy. And when Trump heard that, he's like, nah, you got to go. Jeff, take care of business. So Sessions dialed it up, had this guy Rothstein cut Comey loose. It's about time. Trump should just end the FBI. He's these agencies have become so bloated. They become so hyper kind of attenuated to every little minor detail of our lives. And they're engaged in acts that are, not really all that great. And in many cases, they generally are going, their services are going out to the highest bidder. Certainly that's how the CIA operates, both above the line and below the line. And the FBI, which really should all be about domestic terrorism, all they want to do is entrap people. They go to these mosques, and they start talking to these guys, and one of their guys speaks Arabic, and starts cooking up this idea that they're going to be part of this fatwa, and they're going to do this act, and this is going to happen, and this is going to go down, and there's a few more stooges that are introduced into the terror cocktail, and next thing you know, these guys go out and they try to do something. And it's the FBI that's created the whole situation, and the guys that are supposed to be there and help them carry out their nefarious deed against the great Satan of the planet. They're gone, and I said, "Oh, what do we do now?" Sorry, buddy, you've been had. That's what the FBI does. Sets people up. Oh, look what we did. We caught some terrorists. Well, what you did is you caught people that were on the verge of maybe being politicized, and with your help, they got really politicized. Maybe with your help, instead of politicizing them, you could get into them and convert them to Christianity or something. Maybe you can convert them to Scientology or, I don't know, Deepak Chopra. Maybe this thing could go in the other direction instead of just turning them out. Oh, look what we did. We caught somebody. Aren't we great? We're all over it. Give us more money. We need more money for things like this. They have to. If I were Trump, here's what I would do. I would disband the FBI and the CIA and the NSA like unilaterally. I'd bring it down to skeleton crew, and then I'd create something new. And maybe that's what they're going to do. I've been thinking about Trump's first 100 days, and we're going to talk about that here at the beginning of the show. And I started to talk about this last week, where I broached this idea that if you wanted to take on sort of the machine, right? If you wanted to take on the machine, and let's be clear, I believe there's a machine consciousness running this planet. That doesn't mean that the global elite and the Rothschild money network and all these blood-sucking, baby-eating vampires are always ascribed to the machine consciousness, although sometimes I think they are for the most part, but some aren't. Some are just a few rungs down the ladder doing their thing, making tons of money, and wanting to basically run the table. And that's what planet Earth is about. It's about running the table at this point in our evolution. I've talked about this many times in the past. If you're not familiar with no limit hold'em poker in a tournament setting, not a cash game, although a cash game could count, in a tournament setting, everybody comes in with theoretically the same amount, well, not even theoretically, they all buy in with the same amount of chips. Now, the difference between no limit tournament poker and the global game is that the Rothschilds or George Soros or the black families of Italy or Bill Gates, you just fill in the blanks, they're playing with a lot more chips. Let's be honest about that. They got a lot of chips. And there are people sitting at the table where they're scraping to get chips. And every time they go to put in a hand, the Rothschilds or whomever will push all in. And you're like, I got 2 9s here. I think I'll fold. Every now and then you got to get done with poker. Every now and then you just got to get a little desperate, and you got to find the right time to push in and kind of bully people around if you can. But the whole idea with no limit poker is to take all the chips. To take all the chips, and I think ultimately there is the goal. Here's where I think the goal is. The goal is to basically own everything. To have all of the planet's assets, whether they're involved in growing, breeding, nurturing, slaughtering, whatever. Anything related to fuel, water, own the assets, and then own the companies that are involved in the production and the distribution of the assets. Until ultimately everything is owned by a very small handful of people, maybe a group of about 8 or 9 people. That's the goal. That is the absolute stated goal. And the way that they do that is by printing fiat money. So they have cash in order to purchase everything. So at the end of the day, the New World Order, it really commences when everything is pretty much owned. And even if you have a small business, let's say, and you can somehow manage to hold on to your business. Let me give you an example. I have a dear friend who has a couple of cafes and restaurants in San Francisco. and she has to fight tooth and nail. She's an independent business owner. She has to fight tooth and nail in order to keep her businesses alive and pay her employees and pay her taxes and everything. And she has to go up against some heavyweight competition, especially on the cafe side like Starbucks. And the city of San Francisco, the state of California, and even the United States government favors Starbucks and how they do business and their accounting in so many different ways that small businesses have to keep up. In order to play the same game, they have to keep up, and Starbucks gets breaks. They get breaks. And so the chains and the franchises get breaks. So what happens as a result of that? If you have a small business and you can't somehow stay in the game, then you wind up going out of business. And that business has not become owned by a major corporation or a conglomeration, but to some extent it has been. It's been negatively absorbed. Positively absorbed is when the business gets bought. At least somebody gets something out of the deal. So there's a way in which to own something by essentially obliterating the competition. So at the end of this cycle, the whole intent here is planetary ownership by a very small group of people across the board. And then from a government perspective, we had the Food Safety Act that got kicked in when Obama was president. And I'd like to think, and of course I'd have to drill down a little bit here, but I'd like to think that the Food Safety Act has not gotten in the way of local, organic, farm-to-table craft producers. I'd like to think that because here in Texas they proliferate, and there's a ton of them, and they're great for not just the local economies, but they're great for people who are, eating food that's raised and grown locally and under, limited sorts of conditions, no pesticides, no GMO. Of course, everything is subjected to the rainfall coming out of the chemtrailed sky, so we can't really, deal with that. I mean, we can deal with it by dealing with it, but it's in the atmosphere, it's in the air. I suppose if you have kind of a biodome and a greenhouse, you could really control the environment, come out with some really powerful, very clean, organic food. That's very possible. So hydroponics or whatever. But I would, you'd have to have airflow because, we're talking microparticles of aluminum, right? Micro particles, which can fit, just float through doors and stuff. So you'd have to have some serious filters and everything, even at that level, to keep the microparticles out. So, but it's through legislation that also people can be limited to the point where their businesses are no longer functional. I'll give you another example of this. This was a friend of the family, distant, not even a friend, it's a distant relative. I don't even know the guy, but I know the story. And he was an underwear soft goods manufacturer, and he had a business in the United States. This was back in the 90s, and he was doing quite well. He was producing socks and T-shirts and underwear and all that good stuff. And Walmart says, "We want your product." And he was like, "Yeah, great, let's do it." So everything's getting ramped up, and they're getting ramped up for production, and they go into, I think they may have even taken out some money. I forget what happened here. But Walmart said to this guy, "Look, the only way you can be a part of Walmart is if you start manufacturing your product in China." And he was like, "What? Yeah, you got to." And he's like, "No, I'm not going to do that because I employ people." Well, one thing led to another, and he got to this apex moment with Walmart, and he couldn't get out of it. He couldn't get out of it. He wound up actually losing his business. So maybe at the, again, proverbial end of the day, it might have been worthwhile for him to stay with Walmart and to do the China thing, because at least he'd have some money, and maybe he could have paid out his employees. Who knows? Started another company. But he lost his company. And again, there's that kind of, and Walmart getting the tax breaks, from their little tax magic that they do off the coast when they bring goods in and such. Put the guy out of business. So yet that's another example of kind of running the table, putting somebody out of the game. And that's negative absorption. They don't have to worry about him. Nobody in that space has to worry about him anymore. And I've talked about this many times. I talked about the apple grower, in New Mexico, in kind of the mountain area of New Mexico, and how they were producing apples and selling them down in Mexico and doing great, employing Mexican families and bringing high-quality apples to Mexico. And next thing you know, the Clintons got in, and they made China their most favored nation trader. And one of the areas that he couldn't do anything with anymore through NAFTA, because NAFTA was also part of this two-plank system or this double-plank system, was he couldn't sell his apples to Mexico anymore. And then he couldn't sell his apples to American manufacturers so they could make apple juice or applesauce because China had those contracts. And just know this, if you have a child and you buy apple juice and applesauce, a lot of that comes from China. Think about that. Our apples get shipped to China. And then they produce the products and bring it all the way back across the country, across the world. How insane is that? And they've got different standards. So at the end of the day, it's all about the accumulation of resources and about, 8, 9, 10, 11 entities kind of running the whole thing. So while that is in place, we still have time to work on ourselves, work on our lives, and we're still in the game. Let's put it that way. We're still in the game. And I'm going to talk more about this over the course of the next couple of weeks, because we need tools. We need tools. We need to be able to get to the next level. Okay, it is not, and I will always, always, always pull back the curtain. Always. Because if we pull back the curtain, we can see what's going on. And there's a little guy from Kansas who's back there pulling levers. And he's not this great, omniscient, ominous character. He's a little man in a suit. His name's Warren Buffett. I'm just kidding. So we need tools, and this is where we're going to be taking these podcasts from kind of this point forward. Again, I'll always pull back stuff. I'll always give you the news, try to break things down. But we have to accumulate tools right now. And our tools have got to be comprehensive. They have to be, one, material. They have to be, two, when I say material, I'm talking about money and resources. We got to have them. We got to get them. It's essential. It is really essential. And it can be challenging, but it's not impossible, because wherever there are people making money across this planet in droves right now, huge, huge sums of money. And I actually know some of them. So it's not impossible, okay? We're going to have to wrap our heads around this and come up with some really powerful solutions. We need economic empowerment. We need resources. When we have them, we can do things with them. That's number one. Number two, we have to have a sense of hope and faith that when we have the resources, that we can apply them in ways that are going to benefit us and our future and our future lives of our children, all those things. Very, very important. The hope and the faith also come into the acquisition of resources. Because if you don't have any hope or faith, you say, why am I going to do this? Why am I going to get all this? It's just going to get taken away. The IRS is going to come to my door. So we need to have hope and faith. We need physicality. We've got to be strong. We have to be really strong. Our bodies have to be strong. Our minds have to be strong. And this comes to the fourth part, spirituality. We have to be spiritually strong. This is really important. Very important. It's almost like the world has become bifurcated, and it's been bifurcated for a very long time. And I'm going to use two groups. And again, I may wander into sensitive areas here, but you'll see where I'm going with it. And it is not, how do I say this? What I'm about to share with you is not mutually exclusive. Okay. If you look at Christianity as a model, what is Christianity? What is the thrust of Christianity? It is, to some degree, austerity, simplicity, humility. These are all wonderful, wonderful aspects because it connects us, especially humility. Humility connects us to other people. Humility connects us to life. Humility is not lowering ourselves. And humility is being open. It's a state of openness. When a person is humble, they're open. They're open to mystery and revelation, and they're open to beauty. It's a really profound state, humility. So it's also very much connected to Christianity, right? Humility, chastity, all these things that you strip away the material world and you live with enough so that you're not encumbered, not just by the goods that come along with a high degree of materiality, but the thought forms, the relationships, and the distractions. Because one of the things that Christianity has at its center is you place God in the center of everything. So you don't want a lot of distractions. You don't want a lot of materiality. You don't because then you're moving kind of off your mark. You're moving off this navigational point that's inside of you. Now, I think that we have to adjust our model. I think we have to adjust our model. And this goes back to some of these presets, emotional presets that I've talked about post-Trump. And this is nothing new. Okay, I'm not breaking any new ground here. You had tons and tons of prosperity preachers. My favorite being Reverend Ike. You could have your pie in the sky and eat it too. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite Reverend Ikeisms. Joel Osteen is the modern equivalent of this, and I'm not going to go down that path. But what I do want to address is the fact that we need to be equally accountable for our spirit and our resources, and that they need to rise in some ways to the same level. And we can get into things like love and having a sacred relationship to the things that we know. Those are all really important things. So the Christian mindset has been one of humility, prosperity, humility, simplicity, and there's even this kind of notion of vows of poverty, which a lot of us kind of carry around, and it's unfortunate. And I've got a lot of past lives where I've been a religious person and hung out in many different circles, from cathedral schools to covens. I know this as a part of myself. So, I've had to work through some of the vows of poverty stuff, in this lifetime. And it's not that easy. I'm getting better at it, right? But that's been the Christian model, the core Christian model, not the sort of newer super church Joel Osteen, which is what it is. And then you have this other model, which is, I think, really connected to Judaica. And in Judaica, it's like, hey, this world is where it's at. And there's an accumulation of power, and there's an accumulation of resources. And we're going to make it happen here. We're going to empower, ourselves, our family, our tribe, our temple, and we're going to have massive resources in order to do that. Now, there's a whole series of decisions and choices and rituals that go along with it, but I'm not going to get into here. But in order for us to compete, because that model now is pretty much the worldwide model. It's the worldwide model. I mean, it's even trickled down into the streets, right? It's a similar kind of model to some degree, without without the fancy geometry of the Kabbalah and the gematria. So, but what we have to do now is we've got to enrich ourselves. It's important, and we have to also have our spiritual focus and drive, and it's good. So these are all really important aspects. And over the course of the next few weeks, I'm going to try to get into this more, so that you have tools and you can move through this time and do it in a way where you're aware of what's going on, you see what's going on, and we can make course corrections very quickly and accelerate and ignite our lives. And this is where we need to take this thing now. All right. Let's talk about Trump's first 100 days. And so I've been thinking, again, this all started last week. And I was thinking, well, if you really wanted to take on this machine, you wouldn't take it on directly, because that would be just stupid. That'd be stupid. You'd want to take it on indirectly. You'd want to, because you know what the odds are. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, Trump is who he says he is, and what he put out there to the American people. Let's just take that for the sake of argument. He's been cast and painted as somebody who's not very bright, and I totally disagree with that. I think he's actually very bright. And if you knew what happened to JFK or anybody else who's tried to change the social mechanism, well, would you do it? Would you do it that way? Because there's a map there, and that map leads to extinction pretty rapidly. So if you were at all, and I mean at all, so inclined to make some kind of change in the machine consciousness, some kind of change against the deep state, some kind of change against the Babylon system, you would not take it on directly. You would come at it from angles. You may come at it from 8 or 9 different directions. But you wouldn't come at it directly. And what have we seen over the past 100 days? We've seen a lot of variance. We've seen a lot of this and a lot of that. We've seen a lot of flip and a lot of flop and a lot of flip and a lot of flop. And while it might look like somebody who doesn't know what he's doing, and I'll guarantee you there's a lot of learning curve on the job stuff that Trump is having to deal with, I think that there's something going on here. Now, again, he's got his cast of characters that he's surrounded himself with, the Goldman Sachs gang. He's got Jared Kushner, a.k.a. Damien the Omen. So there's a lot inside of his cabinet, in his immediate circle, that makes one pause to wonder, oh, okay, well, that's all well and good, but you see who's surrounding him? Yeah, absolutely I do. And I see the impact of it, and I think Jared Kushner should, take a hike. I think him and his corrupt family should go take a hike. It's not going to happen anytime soon because he's married to Trump's daughter. So, yes, I'm quite aware of that. And at the same time, I'm watching this pattern of chaos. And we've had some time. One of the things that I'm a little bit guilty of, and I think some people might be in the same camp, but I'm a little bit guilty at times. I'm better at this than I was, of having a quick trigger finger. And so when we look at something like Syria, which I did not like, and then the big gas bomb in Afghanistan, we're all thinking, oh shit, here's Trump. He's the globalist. He's the warmonger. He's the warlord. He might be. He might be all those things. But there also might be something else going on. And I'm not necessarily saying it's 5D chess. Because a lot of times when people who are more or less okay with chaos one of the things that they find out is that in the moment when the chaos occurs, there are interesting things that take place. And let me give you an example. If you've done any kind of online research or research in general, you start off with one thing, and then the next thing you know, you throw yourself out there, and then bang, there's another. And all of a sudden, you find yourself in this area. We've got all this information. It's like, wow, this is kind of amazing, To some extent, that's kind of like chaos theory. I mean, to some degree, you put yourself out there, and it's not like you're going to say, okay, well, I'm going to look at this person, this person, this person, this person. You've got this map and this grid, and you're going to spend 15 minutes on each. I mean, that's a very different kind of thing. You start off on a journey, and then you sort of begin to drill down, and next thing you know, you hit a taproot, and boom, you've experienced some really interesting connections. But there's some chaos that's involved in there. It's free form. It's free associative to some degree. It's like you're allowing this energy to work with you in ways that you cannot predict. And people who are really good at chaos understand this. And it's in those moments where things are revealed. People reveal themselves. Situations reveal themselves. Information reveals itself. And in those moments, if you're a chaos miner, then you can just grab these things, and they're like nuggets. And they don't come about. Now, they don't come about by any other way. Now, there is the opposite side of that where it's consistency. And consistency is very important to a large degree. If you're going to be in a relationship with somebody and have a long-term relationship, you want somebody that's consistent. Chaos every other week is going to drive you nuts because you can't count on it. It could be fun, it could be crazy, but over a while it becomes draining. So consistency it has its own fruits that it actually bears. And with Trump, I think consistency is in alignment with loyalty. I think it's in alignment with loyalty. That's my sense. That he really rewards loyalty, and loyalty is based on consistency. And again, this is not an infomercial of Trump. The guy is super flawed. But I'm just trying to make sense as to what's gone on here for the last 100 days. Because you could just go down, you could draw a line down the center of a page, and on the one side of the page, you can put all the things that he's done that are interesting and good, like, of course, the TPP, the defunding of Planned Parenthood, which I'm a fan of. I'm sorry. I'm a fan of the defunding of Planned Parenthood for personal reasons. He had, hey, we're going to pull out of the Paris Climate Accord. Again, I don't think that's a bad thing. These are all pretty good things. And then on the other hand, he's flipped on China and the currency manipulation, and he's flipped on, he's going back on his NAFTA sort of pronouncements. He's modified his stance on immigration and Muslims, and he's not using the word, radical Muslim. He's not using any of those words anymore, thanks to McMaster. So you take a line, you draw it down the center of a paper, and you'll see probably pretty equally that there are things that have, gone on. Now, he was really into moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Well, he's kind of gone back on that now. And he's got Ivanka running around the world, playing the grande dame of climate change, Princess Ivanka. And, maybe he's doing that to appease her. And maybe he's doing that to appease his critics. I don't know. Maybe at some point he'll flip on that and he'll say, oh, yeah, we've got to do all these things and carbon tax it. And that could happen. That could absolutely happen. Again, with Trump, you've got that Sun-Uranus conjunction, true node in Gemini. You never know what you're going to get. Never know what you're going to get. Let me read you an interesting little comment I found on YouTube. Okay, I was on Henrik Palmgren's YouTube channel. I really like Henrik, even though he stiffed me for being on the show one day. I really like Henrik. I think Henrik has a lot of. I think he's got a lot of balls, to be honest with you, because he changed his programming And he went from the sort of conspiratorial world and the occult symbolism and the esoteric world. He had a lot of good guests, and Henrik knows a lot about that stuff. And he got really into white identity and the alt-right, and because Henrik's country was being completely steamrolled, and he saw it. He saw it ahead of time, and he left, and he came to the United States, and he hooked up with that woman Lana. They got married, and they're trying their best. And you may not like it. You may think it's hateful. I don't. And I've lost some friends on Facebook because of this. But anyway, Henrik decided to have kind of an esoteric guest on his show recently. And it's David Dees, who does a lot of the art, has done a lot of the art for Jeff Rense. And David's a great artist. He's not a great speaker. And he's doesn't work. But what I found interesting was this one comment, and this has to do with Trump. And it's actually very funny. It's a funny comment, so I want to read it to you in full, in toto, and I'm not going to censor any of it, all right? So, here we go. It says, first off, all of you people are fucking retarded. The guy's name is RT. Remember this night like the night he won because you're going to feel like such assholes. Who is this guy giving the interview anyway? He's on my feed. He's obviously not American. Never mind a New Yorker. And the guy you're interviewing, I think it's time you get out of the 1980s and get a haircut and move out of your brother's basement. Oh my God. David Dees is a guy from Southern California. You can just tell he's got that Southern California vibe. Okay. I worked for Trump at Trump Towers for over 2 years. Now, he doesn't say what he did there. Maybe he was an elevator operator. I don't know. For over 2 years, you have no idea what went on in that time frame. It took him years to decide to run. This isn't humorist. He truly didn't think he'd make it past the inauguration. You know nothing. You're not Alex Jones. You never will be. This is an interesting comment. You're not Alex Jones. I don't want to be Alex Jones. This is New York, not Sweden or fucking Australia. So if you never even met the man, you'd think a real radio host, but at least read The Art of the Deal. It's been 100 days, all of you assholies. Does anyone in this comment box even know what he's done so far that has to do with the number one reason why he ran? And this is an interesting comment here. He says, has to do with Yemen. He doesn't elaborate, but has to do with Yemen. He has the Pentagon and the Army and the best generals in his corner. That's why he said okay. Steve Pieczenik got him to seal the deal. You two asshole Swedes should worry about your own pathetic fucking country instead of bashing Trump. The fact that you think Trump has been working with the media this whole time and they did this, you might as well move back to Sweden and get ass raped by Muslims. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I'm reading this in total because you have to, in the spirit of the email, and this guy, or the comment, this guy being from New York. It's been 100 fucking days, assholes. What do you think he's doing right now? He's figuring out exactly who's a rat and who's real. Drain the swamp. Okay, so in less than 100 days, he's going to arrest politicians and foreign leaders with documents hidden deep in CIA in order not to be found. He's going to arrest Cheney? Cheney? In a week? You idiots. This story will leak eventually. The night of the election, the CIA hacked into 9 states at once when everything was just quiet after Trump seemed to win, and he had that oh shit look. Well, I can testify 100% to a grand jury that the CIA people working in Langley that night were threatened by Pieczenik and General Flynn, who had 2 F-18s and armed drones over Langley. Now, I don't know how that happens, but this guy says he can testify 100%. You assholes should go back to your own countries and worry about the wiping out of your people. Next paragraph. And dickheads, he didn't take the bait. He knew the gas story was BS. That's why he called Putin not 20 minutes like fucking CNN says before. 3 hours, and he was he was told to tell Assad. And what did he do? Distracted everyone with the mother of all bombs to please the neoconservatives. Then what? Everyone found out that he bombed an empty runway in the same spot 8 times, aka nothing. Then what? The true snake shows his head. Israel then bombed Syria, and Russia warned Bibi, you do it again and we're taking you out. Trump said nothing. P.S. You two 40-year-old misfit loser wannabes. Netanyahu came here with 1 day's notice, aka emergency, aka WTF. When was that? Right after Yemen. You assholes are clueless. And trust me on my grandma. He is not pro-Zionist, you fucking assholes. He has to act like he is. It's a ducking act, and Bibi knows that. Listen to his live call on 9/11. You know nothing about how New York works, or anything street level. By him firing this little rat, watch the pedos who get arrested in the next 2 weeks. Fucking clowns. And dude, you look like Carrot Top. Don't try to say that that's not mom's basement and you've had sex with a female. Don't insult us, dude. Like, come on. That's one of the most classic comments I've ever read on YouTube. And I'm reading it to you because he claims he's got some inside info with Trump, and he actually brings up some interesting points. Now, he didn't have to slam Henrik and David Bezos, whatever. But it's funny. So, what's real in there? There's something in there. I think there's some truth nuggets in there, to be quite honest with you. Let's go back before the election. And one of the things that I said, and again, I'm going to just repeat this, sort of like a tape loop, that nobody can trust Trump. Nobody. And what I mean by that is that it's not to say that he is amoral, although there may be a quality of amorality in him. But he's not necessarily about being amoral and narcissistic and just completely looking after himself, although I think there are qualities in there too. What I mean by that is that even if you think you know him, even if you think you can have a quote-unquote long-term relationship with him, remember, loyalty is key with Trump. If he needed to turn on a dime for whatever reason, whether it was for the highest good, some form of self-interest, the interest of his family, the interest of his company, he would. He'd absolutely do it. And I think that Netanyahu and all these other characters absolutely know that. I think they know who Trump is at some level, and there's this kind of, okay, if you have ever seen Battlefield Earth, it's a really terrible movie, but it's actually like so terrible it's good. And Battlefield Earth is based on the novel that was written by L. Ron Hubbard, who got this story about Earth and gold and mining, and it gets right into the Anunnaki and the Archons and all that stuff. He goes about calling them different names. And he got a lot of this material from his dark magical ritual work with Jack Parsons. And they did a series of these Babylon workings over time. That's what they called them, Babylon workings. And they used Marjorie, Jack Parsons' wife, as Marjorie Cameron was her name, as the great harlot, Babylon herself. And they wound up having these downloads. The whole idea was to create a moonlet, which was a spirit being born out of Marjorie Cameron. And so anyway, I don't want to go into too many of the details, but one of the things that L. Ron Hubbard got is he got Dianetics. He got Dianetics out of it. And he got this story that goes along with Dianetics in the fall and all that stuff. And it gets made into a book, Battlefield Earth. It's made into a movie. And one of the things that these characters in the movie, one of the things that they have on each other is leverage. Leverage. So leverage is essentially keeping another person, they're not even people, they're these grotesque looking space beings, but keeping another one of these beings sort of out of your business. Like if you have leverage on them and they have leverage on you, it sort of neutralizes how one can manipulate and use the other. Okay? Now, if one level of leverage is greater than the other level of leverage, well then one of the people, in that transaction has to move to some degree. And that's all fairly subjective. But this is what happens in this world with business, and especially at kind of a really high level. And there's this relationship with leverage that is at times stated and at other times implied. And the implied leverage is sort of these kind of silent agreements that are made, knowing, well, I've got something on you, you've got something on me, and we're going to begrudgingly have this relationship. But you don't always know what the other person is holding, you see. And that's coming back to the poker analogy. So even with somebody like Netanyahu and all the power of the Mossad and everything and all these other networks, Trump may be holding certain. Now Trump, and this is what's interesting, I think, is that now that he's inside the Beltway, now that he's kind of taking control to some degree over these intelligence systems, especially the FBI, once Trump gets the next person in the FBI, and this is going to have to be completely vetted, and of course the Democrats are going to have to say, oh yeah, we love this person, whatever. But if Trump gets that person, and that person really wants to play and work with Trump, then that's a big game changer, because now he's got he's got this guy Maffeo, who I'm not a big fan. But he's Trump's guy. But if he gets the FBI guy and it's his person, his woman, whatever, he should hire a woman. Wouldn't that be a mind blower? Hire a woman to be the head of the FBI. That'd be interesting. That'd be really interesting. How progressive would that be? Boy, the liberals. What if he hired Cynthia McKinney to be the head of the FBI? She would never do it. But wouldn't it be cool? I think it'd be cool. Because now you'd have a woman, and you'd have a black woman, and she's the head of the FBI. Wow, interesting. Maybe you should hire Oprah to be the head of the FBI. Yeah. Anyway, but if he gets that, now that's interesting, because Netanyahu's got the Mossad. He's got the most powerful intelligence agency on the planet at his disposal 24/7. And not only that, but there is this concept of the Psionim. And the Psionim are people that are not conscripted to the IDF. They're not in the Mossad, but they act as agents at any time they're called upon. So there is the Mossad network, and then there's the Psionim network, which is huge. Huge. And Netanyahu can call them at any point in time. Now, Trump does not have this yet. Putin has his version of the KGB, whatever the Russian secrets. Putin's got that, and they are loyal to that guy. And information is key. It is key. It is critical. You get the right information, and man, it's a game changer. Huge game changer. So by getting rid of Comey, who should have been gone a long time ago, by getting rid of Comey, now Trump has this opportunity to get somebody who can really work with him and provide powerful, real, strong information that could be a game changer in its own right. This is absolutely fascinating, watching all of this go down. And, excuse me. And watching it go down in the way that it's going down. And so I'm backing off a little bit of he's owned by Jared Kushner. And I do think Kushner has a strong, powerful influence over Trump. Don't get me wrong. Astrologically, it's in there. But I think that the next 100 days are going to be very interesting. Very, very interesting. It's 1 o'clock here in South Central Texas. You're listening to the Friday FARcast with Robert Phoenix. I want to thank all the people who took me up on my last offer with the discount on the courses. And that was just a 3-day deal. I had really, really good response on that, and the number of people reached out and they wanted the course, and that happened. And we did some discounts on readings, and that happened. So thank you for all of that. I might have some other things that you might be able to get via my site shortly. So stay tuned with that. But I just wanted to thank everybody. Of course, we'll be on live on Sunday night with the live stream on YouTube. And I've got a new version of my encoder. Maybe it'll bring my handsome visage back to YouTube. For some reason, it just stopped recording my face. And it's been good, though, because I've been able to put graphics and such in there. So we're always evolving here at the Worldwide Network. Moon's in Sagittarius now, so we're being honest, we're being open, we're being frank, and it's a nice moon. How about that Scorpio full moon? Whew, man, intense. I love Scorpio. I'm a Scorpio rising. I love Scorpio people. But when there's a major Scorpio transit, it's always going through my 12th house. So I'm always dealing with very deep, deep stuff, especially with that Scorpio moon and the opposition sun in Taurus in my 6th house. Let's see. Shall we do a quick run of the headlines here today? Anything interesting that we need to talk about and share? Let's see. Obama just made $3 million on a speech. Wow. Obama uses jet 14-car caravan to give $3 million speech on how to live with less to save the planet. You can't make this stuff up. You cannot make this stuff up. Jet 14-car caravan gets $3 million on how to live with less to save the planet. It's typical. It's totally typical. This is the bohemian class of the social Marxists. Jeff Sessions wants a new drug war. Great. I'm in favor. I love the fact that marijuana has become medicinal, that there are really interesting forays into CBD oil, which can be very helpful in terms of reducing anxiety and pain. And you can have all kinds of variations of potency in the CBD oil. I think that stuff is fantastic. I am not a huge fan of the legalization of recreational use. They found that in the state of Colorado, the amount of young people that are entering into emergency in hospitals has increased significantly since they've decided to legalize marijuana in that state. So I think there's some cons that go along with the legalization across the board. I think it's a very powerful tool. I think it's a very powerful medicinal and should be treated with great care and great attention. And I think it serves a really important role in many different manifestations of the plant. Juicing the leaves is absolutely terrific for reducing inflammation and all kinds of other things. And it's not psychoactive. The hemp plant can be produced and used in hundreds of different ways, from clothing to paper to building panels for cars. I mean, it's got to be. I think it's got to be part of our economy, and have said that for a long time. But But Sessions wants a new drug war. I hope he leaves psychedelics alone. I actually think we need more psychedelics. I think Jeff Sessions needs to have a session or two, if you know what I mean. One of the things that I was thinking of, this goes along with Sessions to some degree, is Mike Flynn, and this goes back to the Trump thing. And some people said, well, Mike Flynn wasn't going to last long anyway. I'm assuming, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I have this feeling that Mike Flynn is still in the game and still doing stuff with Trump, although he's not inside the cabinet. And some people who I know who are much closer to the situation. I have a Facebook friend, Mark, who seems to be very connected to this whole kind of new wave of republicanism and the alt-right and stuff like that. So he sends me stuff quite often. And I'm wondering if he might have a little bit of insight into all of this. Assange, if he's still around, and I'm not clear or sure if that's the case, but he said we'll work with tech firms to beat the CIA. Isn't that interesting? So this is an interesting time, fascinating. It's like a game of, cat and mouse. And there's this level of strategy and innovation and adaptation and mutation that's taking place constantly. It's really interesting. And the world is an interesting place. It can be scary. It can be daunting. We're having to stare down the whole AI thing, robotics, and that's coming. When Uranus goes into Taurus, we're going to have to deal with a radical change in how we deal with material goods, automation and material goods. It is coming, and you better be prepared for it. And it's gonna be an interesting time. Blade Runner, by the way, is coming back. It looks great. It looks totally great. Ryan Gosling and Harrison Ford in Blade Runner. Looks fantastic. Looking forward to seeing it. What else? Do we have anything else on the news front today? Not really, but I think we could put this Russia thing to rest now. Dianne Feinstein, of all people, said there's nothing there. So, all you Democrats and progressives, and all you folks who think that the Russians intervened with the election and sunk everything for Hillary Clinton, you better rethink that. Because the general consensus now from James Clapper to Dianne Feinstein is that nope, not there. There is no evidence that it took place. Lay it to rest. Lay it to rest. This Obama thing blows my mind, though. Let's just read this. Let's read the details from it. This thing is... Barack Obama will reportedly pocket a staggering $3 million today for delivering a speech to a sold-out audience in Milan as part of his lucrative post-presidential speaking tour. The former president has already earned hundreds of thousands of dollars for private speeches since leaving the White House. Will make his highest paying appearance yet at the Global Food Innovation Summit today. President Obama flew into Italy's business capital yesterday, according to local media, headed straight for the extravagant Park Hyatt Hotel, which can cost up to £7,100 a night. So this guy is staying in a hotel that is, that's about close to $8,000 a night. After bringing the city to a standstill with a convoy of 14 cars, a helicopter, and 300-strong police escort, President Obama's entourage reportedly took over 2 floors of the hotel. Who's paying him? The former commander-in-chief also took a private tour of the Pinacoteca Ambrosiana Museum in the city's cathedral. President Obama has enjoyed weeks of holidaying since leaving Washington on January 20th, including kite surging lessons with Richard Branson. How about that? In a move that was highly criticized by former colleagues, he picked up $400,000 last week for a speech to Wall Street bankers, which he accepted in September while he was still president. President Obama will give his speech in Milan at Seeds and Chips, a conference on the impact that technology, innovation, and climate change will have on food availability and production worldwide. Of course, because he's an expert. After the address, he will take part in a conversation with Sam Cass, the Obama's White House chef, who also helped run Michelle Obama's public health campaign. Boy, oh boy. However, the Democrat is not expected to discuss Donald Trump's efforts to scrap his health care and climate change legislation. This month, he will reportedly meet with former Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi for private political discussions. And on May 25th, Obama has planned a get-together with German Chancellor Angela Merkel in Berlin. Isn't that nice? Boy, oh boy. It's good work if you can get it, huh? Jeez. But it's deeply ironic that he has spent quite a bit of money in order to get there, in order to stay there, in order to be moved around the city, and then accept a $3 million reward for speaking about things like simplicity and living with less. It doesn't get much better than that, does it? Man, if you could see what's going on outside of my studio here, I've got a swarm of birds. They're just in full force, full function. I have a little bird's nest. They do this every year. I've got a sprinkler. I hope I never have a big fire, because that sprinkler is, I guess it would just power that bird's nest right off of it if anything happened, maybe. And every year I have these tiny swallows that get born in there, and it's amazing to watch them kind of get older. And they get to this point where when their mom or dad or cousin or whoever comes in and flies in with a worm or bug or whatever they're bringing in, they start to chirp in unison, and each one's trying to chirp louder than the others to get the attention. And this happens, like clockwork throughout the day. It's an interesting sound. It's not always pleasant, I have to say, but it's an interesting sound. And last year, I think we had actually 2 or 3 broods that were hatched in this little mud nest. So it's always interesting this time of year. All right, I think we're done. I think we're clear. I'm not sure I have much more to say or to pad today's show. But we got to just keep our eyes on what's going to happen here over the next 100 days. It's going to be very interesting. We've got this new guy in North Korea, and he's putting the brakes on the McCain train. Isn't that great? This guy comes in, and who knows? Maybe he's a Chinese agent. We never know about these things. We just don't know. We have superficial knowledge, which is why I like to use astrology, by the way. Because at least astrologically, we can get a sense, like, what's going on? What's this person about? Who are they? What are they doing? Who are they related to? What are they related to? And this guy from South Korea, he's an Aquarius, and he has that Venus-Mars conjunction in Pisces. He's kind of peace-loving. And he's not down with having a nuclear war with North Korea, because, of course, South Korea would suffer. So this is what a lot of people don't know. This is what a lot of people can't really wrap their heads around. If they're going to bunker bust North Korea, South Korea suffers, and so much production comes out of South Korea. Cell phones, cameras, stereos, whatever, for cars, whatever, that comes out of South Korea. And if you have a full-on kind of conflict or bunker bust, and you've got to irradiate South Korea, good luck with that. Good luck with that. They're going to protect their assets and their infrastructure and their ability to produce goods, because that's part of their lifeblood. They being the oligarchs, and they being the South Koreans and the people that are invested in those companies. I think ultimately what they're trying to do is they're trying to pop some kind of regime change in North Korea without firing a weapon. And I'm not sure it's going to work. So good luck with that. Good luck with that. Anyway, it's interesting to watch this guy come in and, put 2 fingers in the air and say, peace, brother. All right, that's it for today's show, and we're going to give it a wrap here. I'm going to get into this beautiful day. So we'll see everybody on Sunday night, or at least as many of you as possible, with the Sunday night live stream. And we'll be back next week, and we'll be looking at how we can empower ourselves and get through this time and have some tools. This is where we're going to be taking these podcasts, and hope to deliver things that are useful for you. Okay? Because we're going to get through this time, and we're going to thrive. And it's our time. All right, there you go. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, and you've been listening to the Friday FARcast, and you can find me. Oh yeah, real quick. If you go to the Off Planet page on YouTube, the Off Planet channel, you'll be able to hear my latest connection with Randy Moggins and Emily Moyer, where the three of us mind meld and get in some interesting places and spaces about astrology and current affairs. And that's it. That's it for today. All right. Take good care. Have a great weekend. I'll see everybody on Sunday night. We're out of here.